It was supposed to be their perfect day. White roses everywhere, musicians playing under fancy chandeliers, people clinking champagne glasses in their well-dressed hands. But everything, every flower, every fake smile stopped the moment the ballroom doors slammed open. And I walked in. Not the broken woman they thought I'd be. Not the thrown-away wife they'd kicked out into a snowstorm with a 3-week-old baby. No, I was changed. I had come to make things right. Everyone looked at me as I walked inside, with 2 security guards in nice suits beside me. Behind me, an older man with silver hair carried a leather briefcase. His face showed nothing. I smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a woman who had come back from being destroyed, ready to fight. And as everyone gasped, I finally spoke. "Thank you for inviting me, Ryan. I'm so glad you wanted me here because I have some news. But this story didn't start with fancy things. It started with ice and lies. 6 weeks earlier, I was almost broken. The snowstorm hit the streets of Fairview hard. I could barely see through my frozen eyelashes. My boots were thin and cracked, sinking into knee-deep snow. My arms, frozen from the cold and from holding my newborn baby, shook as I protected her tiny face from the cruel wind. Emma was just 23 days old. We had nowhere to go. Behind me, the door to the house I'd lived in with my husband for almost 10 years slammed shut and locked. My life had been kicked out in one terrible morning. That morning, Ryan came downstairs for work, carrying not a cup of coffee, but a folder of divorce papers. No warning, no talk, just the quiet slap of ending as he put them next to my bowl of oatmeal. "Sign them," he said simply. And then, as if cruelty called her, Vanessa walked down the stairs wearing Ryan's shirt. The betrayal was complete. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. When I reached for our daughter, Vanessa leaned in with a mean look. "You're just a tired, worn-out mess," she hissed. And then she spit on me, on my face. Ryan laughed. It was that laugh that would stay with me forever. Not the cheating, not even the stealing. It was the laughter, how light it was, the happiness he took in destroying me. He emptied our shared bank account that morning. Every dollar we'd saved, over $47,000, disappeared. He moved it to his personal account to pay for his new life with her. The future we'd built, gone with one computer click. He told me I had half an hour. "Take what you can carry," he said. Vanessa followed me through the house, making fun of me, criticizing my weight, my stretch marks, the smell of baby formula. The final mean thing, he took the car, saying it was in his name. He canceled the phone plan, disconnected everything. So I walked through snow with my baby wrapped inside my coat. 3 miles to the only place I might find help, a women's shelter on the east side. I didn't cry, not even when a passing car splashed me with slush and didn't stop. Not when I walked past a store window and saw myself looking exhausted, swollen, and broken, because something deep inside me was starting to burn. The shelter gave us warmth, baby formula, and a place to sleep. I thanked them with all my heart. But I didn't rest. Not really, because I remembered something. Something that had come in the mail the morning I was kicked out. A letter in a heavy envelope with legal markings. I'd left it on the kitchen counter, unopened, as I rushed to pack. But the name on it had bothered me all night. Bramley and Finch, estate lawyers. Using a borrowed phone, I called the number. The voice on the other end was calm and professional. "Miss Morrison, we've been trying to reach you. You're the only person who gets your grandmother's money. We've been waiting for proof of your child's birth." I froze. "What money?" I asked, shaking. "The Morrison Legacy Trust. You're now the only person who gets it. Miss Morrison, the trust is worth about $3.2 billion. The next 2 days passed in confusion and careful hope. My grandmother, Eleanor, had been a mystery, warm but quiet. I remembered her telling stories about her young life, about business meetings and fancy things, about being the daughter of a powerful person. I had thought they were just bedtime stories, fairy tales. They weren't. She had walked away from it all many years ago after something sad happened, leaving the money locked in a trust, waiting for me, for my child. The day Ryan kicked me out, the day Emma became only mine, I became one of the richest women in the country. And I knew exactly what I had to do. The change began. Personal trainers, stylists, helpers, lawyers. I lost 50 pounds in 5 weeks. Not because I cared about looks, but because I was focused. I didn't want to look unrecognizable. I wanted to be unforgettable. I bought properties, bought Ryan's company's biggest customer through a secret company, and started moving game pieces on a board he didn't even know existed. And when the wedding invitation came, a mean, fake sorry message sent through someone we both knew, I smiled for the first time in weeks. "I'll be there," I wrote back. 6 weeks after the snow. 6 weeks after being kicked out, I walked back into his life, not as the woman he threw away, but as the payback he never saw coming. They say revenge is best when it's cold. I disagreed. I served mine sharp, hot, and perfectly arranged like an 8-course meal at a fancy restaurant where my ex-husband was the main dish. The morning after that important phone call from Bramley and Finch, I checked myself into a private recovery center, not for healing, but for planning. That's where I met Isadora, my personal helper, who had once managed public relations for 3 huge company CEOs. "You don't just need revenge," she said, crossing her legs and opening a leather-covered planner. "You need legacy." She was right. Ryan had tried to erase me. I would become unforgettable. In the second week, I bought controlling interest in Greystone International, Ryan's company's largest customer. Through 2 layers of secret companies, it was easy to stay invisible while I controlled things from behind the scenes. Ryan wouldn't know until it was too late. In the 3rd week, I hired a team of investigators, not just to follow Vanessa, but to look deeply into every piece of her digital life, photos, deleted posts, texts. A whole file was built and given to me like a shiny magazine. Vanessa had secrets, really good ones, and I'd be using them. By the 4th week, I made contact with the venue director of the Riverside Grand, the place where their big wedding would be. His name was Garrett, and he liked expensive whiskey and bigger paychecks. I offered both. In return, I was given secret control of their big day. Behind the scenes, I approved food, flower arrangements, and photographer contracts. No one suspected anything. I watched the wedding happen from far away like a conductor watching a symphony of lies. And then came the 5th week. Ryan started to fall apart. His financial records, which I had someone get, showed credit card debt over $61,000. He'd taken loans from his parents, sold his stocks, and even borrowed money against his car. All to pay for a wedding he believed was his victory. Vanessa, for all her smugness, had started breaking down. Security video I got from a dress shop showed her throwing a fit over a gown not being steamed perfectly. Her fake personality was breaking, and I made sure it broke faster. I leaked hints, just whispers to old college friends who still followed her, about her ex-boyfriends, her lies, even her plastic surgeries. It wasn't mean. It was planned. They invited me to the wedding to be cruel, but I was coming for closure. 3 days before the wedding, I sent a message to my estate manager. "Have the roles detailed. Navy 1. Emma and I will arrive in style." She was nearly 2 months old now, bright-eyed and peaceful. She slept through the city's noise with the calm of a queen. That same day, I finished buying the Del Mar Hotel Group, parent company of the Riverside Grand. Through Morrison Holdings, I now owned the building Ryan was paying a lot of money to rent. Perfect justice doesn't just happen. It's built. The night before the wedding, I stood on the balcony of my Manhattan penthouse, looking out at the sparkling skyline. Emma slept inside, wrapped in comfort, protected by warmth and love. I watched the city that had once seemed so impossible. And I whispered into the wind, "You're going to see me, Ryan. You're going to remember me." Wedding day. I stood in the entrance of the Riverside Grand, looking into the full-length mirror. The woman looking back at me was unrecognizable. Gone was the tear-streaked face, the swollen skin, the hunched shoulders. I had been shaped by anger and made sharp by justice. My gown, a stormy purple custom design, hugged every curve with beauty and strength. Diamond earrings sparkled like icicles. My hair, now cut into a sleek shoulder-length bob, shined like ink under the chandelier light. Behind me, Emma slept quietly in the arms of her nanny. My daughter, the reason I'd survived, the reason I had become a storm in silk. A hotel worker approached. "Mrs. Dalton, everything is ready." "We're ready when you are." I nodded. "Let the bride walk." "I'll follow." Inside the ballroom, the tension was already building. Vanessa was glowing. She wanted this wedding to be her greatest moment, the proof she had won. Her gown was pearl white and heavy with crystals. Her smile was fake, but behind that smile, cracks were starting to form. She noticed Ryan's sweat, the way his eyes kept looking toward the doors. He was waiting for something, or maybe dreading it. Good. The music got louder. Guests stood up. Vanessa started down the aisle, not knowing that her carefully planned life was about to explode. Then the doors opened, and I entered. Every conversation stopped. Every breath held. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I didn't rush. My heels clicked across the marble floor with the confidence of a queen in her court. Next to me were Robert, the lead lawyer from Bramley and Finch, and two personal security officers dressed like fancy bodyguards. Ryan's mouth opened, then closed. Vanessa froze, her bouquet lowered an inch. Gasps spread through the crowd as people realized who I was and who I wasn't anymore. I spoke clearly, calmly, my voice cutting through the silence. "Thank you for inviting me to see your love story, Ryan. It's only right that I bring something to the ceremony too." I nodded. Robert opened his briefcase. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, pulling out a document with gold fancy letterhead. "I represent Claire Morrison Dalton, legal heir to the Morrison Legacy Trust. As of 5 weeks ago, she became the sole owner of controlling interest in Morrison Global Holdings, a corporate empire worth about $3.2 billion. The room gasped. I kept going. "This venue? I own it. The chandelier above us? Bought it last week. Your caterers, the champagne, the photographer. You paid for all of it, Ryan. But it's now funded by me. And I've sent the profits to the very shelter you left your daughter and me to freeze outside of." Ryan stumbled a step. "Furthermore," Robert continued, "we have filed civil and criminal cases against Ryan Dalton for stealing marital money, totaling over $47,000, funds he drained to pay for this event and his personal lifestyle." Vanessa looked at Ryan in horror. But I wasn't done. "Vanessa," I said, turning slowly toward her. "You should know a few things too. First, spitting on someone is legally considered battery in this state. Expect to hear from the police. Second, your unpaid debts, false claims on past job applications, and that little stealing scandal at your previous company? All recorded." Her face lost all color. Gasps turned to whispers. Whispers to wide eyes. Cell phones lifted into the air, recording every second. Ryan tried to speak. "Claire, wait." I raised a hand. "You threw me away like garbage. You laughed when I was covered in spit, holding our baby in a snowstorm. You canceled my phone. You drained our savings. And now you want to explain? He said nothing. Let me explain instead, I said, stepping forward. I took your biggest client. I destroyed your career before you even noticed. I've already told your company. You've been fired as of this morning. His jaw dropped. And this wedding? It's over because in 5 minutes, the Riverside Grand will shut down this event for breaking the contract. No refunds. You'll owe every vendor triple, and your name is about to be spread across every social media page from here to Paris. Vanessa let out a sob. Guests were already grabbing their things. Ryan sat down hard in a chair, eyes blank. I turned one last time. This isn't revenge, I said. It's justice, and it's the last gift I'll ever give you. With that, I turned and walked out, heels echoing like thunder in the silence. Outside, Emma waited in the Rolls-Royce, still asleep. As the door shut behind me, I breathed out for the first time in what felt like years. And I smiled. The next morning, headlines exploded everywhere. Runaway bride meets billionaire ex, a wedding day disaster. Claire Morrison Dalton declares legal war at wedding ceremony. From blizzards to billions, the Claire Dalton story. I didn't need to search for them. My phone buzzed constantly with media questions, interview requests, and congratulations from people I barely remembered. I ignored them all. The only thing I wanted that morning was to hold Emma and watch the sunrise from the penthouse balcony as the city woke up beneath us. She giggled in her sleep, that tiny, perfect sound reminding me that all the power in the world meant nothing if it didn't protect the ones who mattered most. My war wasn't over, but the first battle had been won publicly, roughly, and without apology. Still, I knew something others didn't. Getting even is a double-edged sword. When you come for people with that much force, they don't always crawl away quietly. They plan, they scratch, they bite. I didn't expect Ryan or Vanessa to accept their embarrassment gently, and I was right. By the third day, Ryan had gone silent. His company had officially closed after losing Greystone International's contract. My doing, of course. The board had blamed him for losing their most valuable account, and the partners forced him to sell immediately. Rumor was he was staying in a hotel outside the city. His phone was disconnected, his cards were declined. But Vanessa? She exploded. She went on social media, calling me a jealous ex-wife and accusing me of faking the trust fund, even claiming that I had hacked her phone and made everything up. You'll hear from my lawyer, she'd posted in a crazy all-caps rant. You think this is over? I don't care how much money she has. Truth always wins. But the truth was never on her side. What she didn't know was that the videos from the wedding, recorded from at least a dozen different angles, had gone viral. Millions watched as her mask broke in real time. They saw the spit, the insults, the breakdown, and they sided with me. Public sympathy had swung so far toward me that people were calling me a symbol, a warning, a warrior. Vanessa, under pressure from the attention and already drowning in growing legal problems, was given her first lawsuit a week later. Battery, lies, and helping with financial fraud. She didn't post after that. I'd like to say I felt victorious, that I celebrated with champagne and rooftop fireworks, but the truth was far less like a movie. I spent my evenings reading through Morrison Holdings' quarterly reports, attending late-night board calls with my new CFO, and taking care of Emma through her first sleep problems. Power doesn't feel like lightning. It feels like spreadsheets, documents, decisions, weight. Heavy, exact, constant. I wasn't playing a character anymore. I was running an empire. And I knew that somewhere, buried under Ryan's guilt and panic, was the understanding that the woman he abandoned had risen far beyond him. Still, one question stayed with me. Why? Why had he done it the way he did? The cruelty, the public shame, the happiness in my pain. Those weren't just mistakes. They were choices. And choices had reasons. I needed answers. It took another week to find him. I didn't send a team. I went myself, dressed simply, no makeup, hoodie and jeans. I checked into the same boring business hotel he'd crawled into. Room 614. I knocked twice. Silence. Then the slow shuffle of feet. When he opened the door, Ryan looked like a ghost. His once perfectly styled hair was flat and greasy. His eyes had sunken in. The man who once threw me into a storm with a baby in my arms now stood before me in sweatpants and shame. He didn't speak, just stepped aside. I walked in. The room smelled of takeout and old beer. Empty water bottles covered the table. The bed was unmade. The curtains were closed. A laptop sat open. Google searches visible. Can you sue your ex-wife for lies? How to declare bankruptcy without losing everything? Can a trust fund be reversed? Claire, he croaked finally, voice rough. Why are you here? I looked at him for a long moment, then sat across from him, knees crossed. I want to know why you did it. Not the affair, not the divorce. The cruelty, the laughing, the stealing, the spitting. Why? He breathed out a shaky, pathetic sound. I didn't know you'd be okay. That's not an answer. Because I felt trapped, he said. Because you changed. Because I hated the life we had, and I didn't know how to leave without burning it down. And when Vanessa came along, it felt easy. It felt like freedom. He rubbed his face. And then it got out of control, and I was too much of a coward to stop. I thought if I could make you look weak, I wouldn't have to admit I was the weak one. We sat in silence. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He knew better. I stood. You'll get a final offer from my lawyers. Sign it. Don't fight it, and disappear. He nodded, and I walked out. Back at the penthouse, Emma was just waking up, eyes bright and unaware of the war her mother had just ended. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "It's done." But even as I said it, I knew a new chapter was beginning. Not revenge, not survival, but something bigger. Legacy. The weeks that followed were not quiet. You don't take apart lives, inherit billions, and walk away untouched. Power doesn't bring peace. It brings watching. Responsibility. Shadows. I found myself sitting in meeting rooms I never thought I'd enter, surrounded by men twice my age and half as smart. Each one trying to figure out how a woman like me, a woman they'd never seen coming, now held control of Morrison Global Holdings. They tested me. They smiled in a condescending way, asked me to explain things I'd already answered, interrupted me mid-sentence. At first, I let them. I watched. I took notes. I learned the shape of their arrogance. And then, one by one, I began replacing them, not with yes men, but with women, with survivors, with people who had clawed their way up. Not because someone paved their way, but because they refused to stay buried. Emma grew, and with her, so did I. Every morning I made her a promise that she would never be invisible. That no matter how much money we had, we would never forget the storm we walked through. That we would build something greater than wealth. We would build safety for women like us. So I did. The Morrison Foundation became real in the spring. Its mission was clear: housing, education, and legal help for women and children escaping abuse. We funded shelters, scholarships, mental health programs, and staffed our board with advocates who had lived the fight. Every dollar Ryan tried to steal became fuel for a revolution. And then, just when I thought the last page had turned, something arrived. A letter, handwritten, no return address, the kind of thing that feels heavier than paper should. I opened it on the balcony, Emma asleep beside me, the city humming below. The writing was elegant and simple. You don't know me, but I knew your grandmother very well. She wasn't just the heir. She was the builder. And she left more than money in your name. She left plans, secrets, a legacy even you don't fully understand yet. If you're ready to know more, come to the address below. Come alone. There was no signature, no explanation, only coordinates. A location in the Adirondack Mountains, a property I didn't know existed, but after a quick check, was actually still under Morrison Holdings. It was remote, gated, forgotten. I hesitated, but I went. The drive took 6 hours. Snow still lined the trees, even in spring. A last bit of winter refusing to let go. My driver waited at the gate. I continued on foot. The house, if you could call it that, was an estate. A fortress of stone and glass sitting against a frozen lake. No signs of life, no tire tracks, and yet the front door opened before I even knocked. Inside, an elderly man stood by the fireplace. You look like her, he said. I didn't ask who. She used to sit there. He nodded to a velvet armchair. Same posture, same eyes. Who are you? Someone who helped build what you now own. Someone who helped hide it when she walked away. He offered me a seat. Tea. I declined both. Why now? Because Eleanor never truly left the empire. She buried it. Hid it until the world was ready for someone like you. Someone who'd been through fire, not born with a silver spoon, and someone who'd choose to use power, not hoard it. He handed me a file. Inside were documents, maps, accounts, secret corporations I'd never seen. Technologies patented and stored away. Real estate, resources, influence that hadn't seen daylight in decades. I looked up at him, confused. What is all this? He smiled faintly. This isn't your inheritance, Claire. That was just the surface. This is the war chest. Eleanor believed the world would change. That one day a Morrison woman would lead it. Not to control, but to defend. To protect what men like Ryan can never build. Legacy born from justice. I left the estate 2 hours later. And everything changed. I returned to Manhattan not as Claire Morrison Dalton, the woman who survived a snowstorm, but as the woman who would shape the storm next time. I hired new helpers. I built think tanks. I created political groups. Quietly, carefully, I began to reshape the invisible landscape where decisions are made. And I did it all while raising my daughter because I wanted Emma to grow up in a world where women like us weren't warnings. We were blueprints. 1 year later, I stood at the groundbreaking of a new building in Brooklyn, the first Morrison Haven, a residential and recovery campus for abused women and children. We had 20 more planned across the country. The press asked the usual questions. How did you find the strength? What was the moment that changed everything? Do you ever think about your ex-husband? I smiled, answered politely, moved on. But in the quiet of my mind, I remembered it all, the snow, the silence, the laughter behind the door. And I whispered something only I could hear. Thank you for underestimating me. Because if they hadn't, none of this would have existed. Not the empire, not the movement, not the payback. I didn't just survive the storm. I became it.